Topic of the day is how to decondition years of conditioning. And I'm going to have Brandon start. You want to start, Brandon?
Yeah, maybe
I'm wondering if
your
that's
How
side,
about
Suji.
right now?
Oh, that's so much better. There we go. Oh, now it's back.
Okay, let me try something else. Let's see. Are we good? Is it better now?
I think so.
Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
let's we figure it out. Okay, let's go. Let's dive in. Oh my God, look who's here.
Hello,
Tree.
everybody.
Trido, do you want me to get you also from Instagram or you want to be
Oh,
just on YouTube?
oh, yeah, no, no. I have all my social media stuff. So
What kind of
you got it going on. You're more advanced than I am. My God.
I know, I know. So let me also get you when on join me on Instagram. Okay, guys, we're gonna figure it out. All right, it's the first time that we're using two different platforms, YouTube and Instagram. So, are you on when? Try though. Are you on Instagram? Not
Yes,
yet.
but you're not live on there.
I am live, Lovey.
Oh,
I got Brandon on.
oh,
See
you are
that?
live. Yeah, yeah, you're right. I see you now.
See, try though when you have too many
How do you
emails.
know he's a real monk or he's a fake monk? Well, real monks don't know how to do this.
There he is. He
I
just
know
joined.
that. I'm still trying to figure this out. Okay, I got you. There we go. So once again, welcome everybody. Trido is going to join us, and you can also come on YouTube, Sudhi Burnett English. And the topic of the day is how to decondition years of conditioning. And we're starting with Brandon. Go ahead, Brandon.
Okay, so let's see where to start. Um, First, I'll define conditioning. A lot of us have the belief that my childhood conditioned me, and it's a very materialistic point of view, as if the experiences themselves are responsible for who I am today, which is there's no way out because we can't change the experiences we had. And so we can become victimized, and then that can be very justified in the world of somatic and trauma healing. It's like you have all of these markers of trauma, these things happen to you, and so you are going to be conditioned a certain way. Gabor Mate has said this before, but it's not the experiences that occur that cause trauma or certain ways of being to become part of our persona. It's our internal response to a circumstance. And in that moment, there's resistance, there's a story that's created, and there's a decision that kind of gets made or assumed in that moment, which says, I'll never experience this again. It's like a big no to reality. And that no to reality is the formation of the negative ego. And that's when the person, or we should say, the mask of our true self is formed. And it's a decision that's made that I'll never get hurt like that again. I'll never be vulnerable again. I'll never, um, share my toys with someone again because I got rejected. Whatever it is, and that, like hardening that happens, becomes a mask that we wear, and we mistake that mask for ourselves. And it's a protection. It's a way of protecting ourselves from feeling something that we were overwhelmed by in the past. And years and years of practicing that mask, we can't tell the difference between the mask and ourselves. And so losing the mask, which can show up as the people pleaser, avoidance, the victim, the perpetrator, the savior. I mean, there's all these roles that we play. We can mistake the mask for ourself. And so often we spend years trying to change the mask or substitute the mask with a different form of conditioning. Instead of being the bad kid, I want to really try to be the good kid or the good boy or good girl or whatever it is. And we keep substituting personality traits and behaviors for ourselves. And there's always a sense of disconnection because we're not having a core shift in who and what we are. So there's one of the main traps that I see in trying to change our conditioning is substituting ways of being, thinking those ways of being define who we are, and therefore we're going to endlessly seek to become the best version of us, which in of itself is rooted in lack. So rather than attempting to perfect the persona by changing our conditioning and finally getting the right conditioning, the process that I'm interested in is the growth through subtraction, is the questioning and the seeing of is this way of being, this conditioning, the choices that I've made, is it actually me? Because when I discover it's not me, then it doesn't carry any weight. My guilt can dissolve, which guilt keeps it in place. And I could see who and what I really am, which doesn't depend on the conditioning. Mm-hmm. And when I see that the conditioning doesn't need to change in order for me to be myself or to see what and who I am clearly, then paradoxically the conditioning starts to change.
Right.
So I'll just leave it with that.
Thank you so much. Dr. Charnel, I keep sending you a request. You have to accept it. I don't know. Trido is trying to. I approve her again. I keep sending her invitation. Here we go, Dr. Charnel. You are invited. Come on board. Let's see if we can get Dr. Charnel on board too. All right. So until Dr. Charnel gets in, Trido, would you like to start? I'm not getting anything.
Sure.
I'm sorry, what is the problem? Dr. Charnel is saying I'm not getting anything.
Yeah, I'm also having trouble. Once you approve it, it tells me that it expired. So maybe today.
Dr. Charnel, I'm gonna try again. Right now, I'm inviting you. So let's see what happens. You should receive an invitation. Trido, what about you? You couldn't get on either?
It says the invitation expired. So, but I just sent the request again. Technology.
Let me see. And ask her as a moderator what happens. Can she get on? Now I add you as a moderator, Dr. Charnel. Let's see if you can get on. And Trido, I sent you an invite too now.
Yes, yeah, you also made me moderator, so let's see if I'm fine.
There we go. Let's see if that helps.
It's still saying invitation expired. So.
Trido, are you using the link that was sent to you?
Yeah, I'm on that link now with you guys right here.
Oh, I see. It's a different platform.
Yeah, for the Instagram, you have to use it separate.
Got it.
Okay. Dr. Charnel, can you join us on YouTube instead then? Let's see if we can get you on YouTube.
This is where we need the assistance of AI.
We don't have Brandon's son on Instagram. Okay. So why don't we do this, guys? Why don't we get everyone on Instagram? I'm sorry, on YouTube. So Brandon doesn't have sounds.
I don't have sound.
I can hear you.
Okay. You can hear, I can hear Brandon too.
Yeah, we hear you, Brandon. If you're not hearing anything, then your speakers simply likely volume your speakers down. But I think you were getting feedback earlier anyway, so.
Yes. So Brandon is fine. If I can get Dr. Charnel on YouTube, that would be great. Okay, let's move on to who wants to be next, Stephen or Trido?
Steven, you go, Steven.
Thank you.
Stephen, go ahead.
All right. So conditioning. Well, I've been studying Vedanta, so as we're taught that we have the law of the gunas. So whatever we surround ourselves, we become like. So if we have childhood conditioning, and it tends to be on the negative side, obviously, likely while we're talking about this for, you may have to find yourself distancing from maybe some of the family that carry negative qualities that you may have adopted as normal. And in addition to after the separation happens, you'd likely have to, depending on the severity, you may need counseling, psychological counseling. It really depends on the level of dysfunction that may have occurred. If we're talking about, something dysfunctional. And of course, the three laws, the three main modes of existence, goodness, passion, and ignorance, we want to obviously strive for the goodness. So we want to be selective when we choose the people we surround ourselves with, our friendship circle, our work circle, social circle in general. You want to obviously be careful who you choose to socialize with and surround yourself with, because those qualities, obviously the negative ones are the ones we're worried about, will actually become adopted by your character, and you may unknowingly carry that on simply because you want to be accepted in the social circle, for example, or amongst your friends and your work colleagues, whatever the atmosphere may be. And so there needs to be obviously an identification there. And if you can't do this, most people need this to be identified from the outside, because it's difficult for all of us to see our weaknesses, from where we stand, because it's been with us for so long. This is going to be something that will require time and effort and work on our part, just like anything. Even if you're going to improve your financial life or your health, you may need obviously additional assistance from outside sources to help get this started. And but mainly, as far as I can speak for my learning and experience, is that your social circle is going to be the main thing. And just like in Scientology, they actually specialize in this. Not that I'm supporting them, but they do specialize in this, removing dysfunction and traumas that have actually been adopted and suffered in the past. And as the Sanskrit word vritti, which is where we get the English word advertisement from, these vrittis attach to our souls, and they actually will travel with us from lifetime to lifetime, because the history is quite longer than we can actually imagine. And so in order to we have to make effort to identify and then to remove these vrittis from the soul, from the subtle body, in order to begin to show improvement in our character. And so nowadays it's worse than ever, especially here in the West. Tridao, you may actually agree with this, with your experience and your teachings, that the West has fallen into moral decay, and this is a big problem for us here. I think that now we're now about to realize all of this and turn this around, but it's going to take a lot of work and a lot of time. So I hope I made that clear. That's my perspective on that.
Yeah, that was very clear. Thank you so much, Stephen. We're
You're
going to move on to Trido, and Dr. Charnel, please join us on YouTube. Okay, let's get into it, Trido.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for all of your contributions so far. Brandon, I'm wondering if you could move that camera up a little bit, because I could kind of cut off right here where you are, right? I thought I'm the only one. If you could move
Brandon, he
just up
wants
a little
more
bit.
headroom. Trido, now last week I was speaking, now he's speaking. He wants you at the top of your head from your laptop.
Are you able to move your camera up a
Well, I
little
gotta
bit?
either
Back
sacrifice
up?
my head on the laptop or here. Like it needs to be sacrificed somewhere.
Oh,
Try
I
to,
see, I
you
see.
you
Oh,
got
it's
you
okay.
gotta just you just gotta let it go because it's the first time and he cannot adjust both here and there.
Also,
He's
Suki,
very good.
I can't hear Trido on my end. Is that normal? Are you hearing him on yours? I mean, I hear a distant echo.
I am hearing him
Okay,
fine.
but are the live attendees able to hear him?
Yes, because we're using my sound, so we
Got it.
can hear.
Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead, Trido.
Um, so last night I was training. Ooh, Dr. Charnel in the house.
Chanel is here. Finally, we got it. Hi, dear. Hello. Dr. Chanel. Hello, hello.
Oh boy.
This is an interesting live, isn't it, guys? one of the best we have.
I feel like
But
we're breaking the internet.
yeah. Okay. Trido. I'm sorry. Go ahead till Dr. Chanel can connect again.
People might think we have special superpowers to break the internet. So, last night I was training Novice Lee. Everyone now knows that I'm training a student who is a novice monk. And we were listening to Ajahn Sumedho, who is the disciple of Ajahn Chah. And I told Novice Lee, I said, you might want to pay attention because, Ajahn Sumedho's thing is causes and conditions.
Mhm.
And I think like maybe 8 out of 10 talks, you will always hear causes and conditions. And that is key cardinal teaching in the teachings of the Buddha. Because we look at our habits, the propensity, frequency, and recencies of our behavior and thought patterns due to these habits. Well, how do these habits form? These habits formed when you were really, 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 really young. We become these tape recorders as babies growing up. As soon as your senses are activated, eyes, nose, ears, you start gathering data information, kind of like a little computer that doesn't know how to talk back yet. You just gather all of these things in. If so someone, a caregiver, was angry and you picked up a lot of that, we look at attachment theories, we look at the conditioning of anger. Then, growing up, you are most likely going to react to things in a unwholesome way. Um, and then of course there's heredity and the passing down of the genes, genetics, that also adds on to that causes and conditionings. This is also known as tracing the links of influence, the practice of dependent origination, paticca samuppada, within the teachings of the Buddha. But by teaching mindfulness meditation, but just the mindfulness part, aware of our habits, aware of our preference, we tend to learn how to unlearn what we have learned through our formative years, unconsciously and subconsciously. And I think that is key here when we talk about conditioning, is learning to unlearn, and that it is safe to do that. It is safe to learn to unlearn all of the things that does not serve us well, is not helpful or healthy or conducive or wholesome to where we are at today. And in order to grow, one must do this, grow spiritually. One must do this and take on the brave step into trying something new. We are fear-based, and so we tend to afraid to unlearn the things that we've learned, because the things that we have learned is a component to ensure our survival. You being bit by a snake, and then I'm telling you, well, let's revisit that and see if we can mitigate some of the intensities of that memory. You may be a little scared and you don't want to try what is new. But during the process, if you trust the teacher and trust the process, then we get some things done. It's a slow, gradual thing to do. It takes years to undo what has been done. Take years to unlearn, to learn how to unlearn, especially if you look at the psychology of learning. But that is my take on it.
Beautiful. Hi, Dr. Charnel. Can we hear you now? Your
Oh,
mic is off.
Yes, I can hear you now. Sorry.
Oh, wonderful. We finally got you on board. How
It
are
was
you?
just a white screen. I couldn't see anything. I couldn't hear anything. There was no sound. It was just white. But I'm glad to be here. Good to see
You're
you
in the
guys.
void.
Yes.
We're so glad to have you on board. So, Dr. Charnel, are you ready to dive into our topic today? Learn to unlearn years of conditioning.
Yeah, the deconstruction process, in my opinion, takes a lot of courage and has a lot of emotions behind it sometimes. I know it's like kind of daunting when you've climbed a ladder and you got to the top and realize you're on the wrong building. Um, you know, especially all if there's any kind of career connected with that or family or whatever. I mean, I've had a few where it's like, wait a minute, what? And how did I get here? And, you know, kind of trying to reverse engineer that and just finding out that half the stuff I had been taught is a lie, whether it's Western medicine or politics or religion or, I mean, you name it. Even family issues, you know, whatever. It's like, wait, what? You know, I've worked with people who didn't know that they were adopted or, you know, found out that their dad isn't their real dad. I just had a patient the other day who had DNA come back and I had to tell her her dad isn't her dad and she had no idea. So just a lot of, you know, it does take a lot of courage to be open to look at other things. And that's why I really love diversity and I love talking to all kinds of people because at any given moment, anything that I say or think is probably wrong and will maybe change 5 minutes later. And I'm okay with that, you know, just being super flexible and open to having a short-term opinion that it probably will be wrong later. You know, it's like I've burned so many CDs and cassette tapes and books, and I don't know how many times I've gone through my library and been like, nope, I don't believe that anymore. Nope, you know, and then I always preface just about everything that I teach with, this is what I think right now. Could be wrong. Open to talk about things, open to perspectives, but that takes humility, and it also takes zero ego, and it also takes a lot of courage because sometimes people don't want to be wrong, and they'll fight and dig in their heels and be like, even if they're clearly wrong, they just will stand up just to not be wrong. And I'm like, who cares about being wrong? Like, so what? Like, I've been wrong, very publicly wrong, and I've made, you know, I've had to recorrect that. And I think to the level that you F up is the level that you fix it. And so if you made a big CD and spoke at a conference and you were completely wrong and just went by what you were taught, then I would want to go to all of those people and fix it. If it's on social media, you go back and you fix it. You know, if it's a personal matter, then you fix it on a personal level. But I think that is the best way to avoid confusion with your audience and with your family and with whatever. And also, like I said, just being very fluid. And one thing I know, I mean, I'm 50 something now, and is pretty much, I don't know anything. I just pretty much say that everywhere I go is like, one thing I know is I don't know. You know, and I will look into it and I'll ask people like you and I'll get your perspective, and I kind of like, you know, put put a weird puzzle piece of, you know, what I think is right or wrong, and I pay attention to how I feel, you know. Sometimes you can get like a weird feeling like this person is off or this situation is off, and go by like the frequency of it or the resonance of it. And a lot of times I've been right that I was wrong, you know what I mean? Or vice versa. It's like, you know, I knew something was off with that guy, and then you find out like, oh, he's been doing this and this on the side or whatever. So I think paying attention to your gut, but also being willing to be wrong and having the courage to even look across the street and talk to other people who are different from you, and to just love everyone. I mean, the bottom line is love. Like, love everyone and love the dark as much as you love the light. And I'm not saying give permission for evil, but I'm just saying a lot of the times that my biggest catalyst of change and transformation has been when I found out I was wrong, and or whatever thing I was in was wrong, an organization or whatever. It's just been like, you know, yeah, I might have like went through a little bit of a dark night of a soul about it, but it caused me to dig deeper, and it caused me to read other things and to look at other things and to explore. And I think that's part of a big thing in life, is just having the adventure of loving well no matter what, and realizing that the dark is a big catalyst if we allow it, and not just being, you know, sucked into, oh, poor me or whatever the situation is, but just being like, hey, cool, what's next, you know?
Right.
Maybe easier said than done, but
Yeah. Well, Dr. Charnel and Trido, I want you to meet another old friend of mine, Stephen. He usually doesn't give anybody the pleasure to do a live, and I had to be after him for years to get it. Stephen, introduce yourself to our audience and tell them a little bit so they can get to know who is Stephen, this mysterious man. Chicago.
Thank you, Sudi. Yes, so my name is Stephen. I
Okay,
had
Brandon, my love, could you please just join us on YouTube? There is some sound issue here.
Yep.
Thank you, love. Thank you so much. Okay. All right,
Okay.
go ahead, Stephen.
Thank you. Yeah. So for approximately the last 15 years, when my life had fallen apart, like most people, this happens to some more or less, to a higher, lesser degree. Everything was beginning to fall apart for me. You know, my career wasn't working, and I began seeing, you know, problems here in America with the economy, and I had a lot of questions. I couldn't understand. It wasn't logically making sense why the things that were happening in the world were happening, you know, and living here in America, we're supposed to be one of the most prosperous countries in the world, and why would these things be happening, right? And so from the perspective of of someone living material life, right, you know, this is obviously unusual if actually someone notices this, anyone with, you know, that's good with details. And you know, after 9/11 happened, and, you know, some suspicious things with that story, and then of course we had a recession in 2008, and you know, most people would just imagine that we would be improving and getting better and better over time, but when we pay attention, especially those of us that have an interest in psychology, we may notice a little bit more about the society, you know, just not quite, as a whole, not quite evolving as we should be. And so I began to ask and inquire, and learning just like anyone would. I used the internet to get my initial information. I came across one, then I had a second teacher, Vedanta teacher, who actually began to explain to me that you know, the real history of humanity in the past of this world. And then that after I confirmed that, I found myself having to practically re-educate myself, because everything us Westerners are taught, especially in high school, with the exception of some minor things, is wrong. All of it, just like Dr. Charnel had just mentioned. And so when you find yourself at this point in your life, it's a little surprising, and you're in a stage of denial. It's like a hump. It's like a speed hump, in the street. You have to press an accelerator to drive over it. So it takes more effort to actually to begin to accept this, that really everything we learned is wrong, and it is true. Everything we were taught was wrong, and it was actually intentionally done this way to exploit you. And it was a long road. I'm sure everyone has their own path, to get to a higher state of consciousness. But after many, many years of study and reading, and many satsangs later, it takes a lot of effort and to understand this. And so for those of us that have our dharma, our duty in life to actually help spread this to large amounts of people, such as myself and Sudi and Tridao and all of us here in the group, really, this is actually very much in need. It's sort of like humanity is dying of thirst, and it's really thirst for knowledge, knowledge to make sense of the world and make sense of ourselves. There's so many of us that walk this planet that don't even know that we're consciousness, that most people believe that they are their body. This is a problem in the West, especially. That's actually one major lesson, and once that's learned, everything else kind of comes together like a nice fitting puzzle when we take all the aspects and put it together. But this is a very big topic. Anyway, so 15 years later, far wiser, my consciousness level is much greater. So I had experience, in 2008, it's sort of around this time this started, I had experienced what's known as a near-death experience, an NDE, where I actually, my consciousness had left my body. And this was kind of like around the beginning of that. All of this happens, and this, I've noticed other people also that have found themselves on such a path too, have actually had something similar happen to them. So anyway, and of course, now, many years later, learning crazy things, like a remote viewing and out-of-body travel, and the fact that you can actually travel outside your body, non-local consciousness. When two people fall in love, there's actually a lifelong bond, actually even beyond this lifetime, that is actually created. People don't know this. This is the science of consciousness is so vast, and I think that everyone needs to know fundamental, this at a very fundamental level, at the minimum, in order for them to make spiritual progress in their life. Because most people, especially in the West, believe that that the purpose of life is to become happy and make a lot of money and retire comfortably, things like this. But that's not necessarily true. So anyway, yeah. So many years later, learning the different Vedic sciences. Jyotish, Vastu Shastra, Ayurveda, all these things, because that was, I latched onto this because it had so many of those sciences that are actually very useful in material life. So anyone that's still living material life, they definitely need these lessons. But so fast forward here, many years later, it's a long road. There's so much to actually talk about. I don't want to take up all the time, with myself, but so now I work as a consultant, a consciousness researcher and consultant, helping people improve the quality of their lives. So I do have gathered enough material to write more than one book, and of course, consulting on various topics of pair bonding, two people coming together for marital purposes, choosing auspicious times for various purposes in their life, how to actually conceive particular characteristics of children. A lot of these things are way out there. But the weirder, the better. That's how I look at it. I love all that strange types of topics. So, anyway,
Weirder the better, but we are more excited. We get more excited about stuff that are weird, right?
wait,
Okay. So, um, Brandon, what are you doing now? Are you doing like coaching, or I forgot to ask you last time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, coaching, one-on-one work. I'm also opening a community. One thing I love about the work of self-inquiry, and Stephen, I heard you talk about Vedanta, Advaita, and I've talked a lot about a direct approach to inquiry and an indirect approach, and I find that there's a lot of people that the direct approach is just too much too soon. You know, like you question who they are, who's the one that's suffering, and it's like me, duh. It's like this, I am, and it could be a little jarring. And I've, led intuitively people into the space of turning towards that self to find just space and land, not really land anywhere, but just exist in that space. And the suffering just drifts. We didn't do anything to it. It's just absent because the person that was holding it up was seen to be non-existent. It was seen to just be another thought. And then there's another side that I find to be really effective with a more progressive approach. I kind of describe it like, imagine being at the bottom of a mountain, and the direct approach is like you snap your fingers and you teleport to the peak, and you're there. And the progressive approach is like a holding your hand, walking you up the mountain step by step. And I can't say one's better than the other. I would just come back to what's relevant for the individual. And that's where my work kind of lands in the center of the spontaneous application of inquiry, mind, connected to somatically what's going on. I call that the practice of immediacy, which is just really getting in touch with immediate sensations, taking emotions and reducing them to sensations, and then ultimately reducing that to consciousness, and realize we're just dealing with one thing. There's not some emotion out there I'm actually positioned against. So it's just this slow, intentional process of coming back to ourselves. And that modality, I've called it integrated self-inquiry. And so that's what I teach in small groups and retreats and one-on-one.
Okay, very nice. Dr. Charnel, people who get a session with you, what is it about? I mean, what are you mainly working on, and how can they get help? Like, if I get a session with Dr. Charnel, what should I be expecting?
Well, I do actual, biofeedback remote, and I also do soul audits where we can measure consciousness and where people are in consciousness, and even work through to help people get, to a higher place, or to, whatever higher. I did this, but really everything's inside, right? So, but with biofeedback, I can do reports even on spiritual issues, if there's like a psychic attack, or if you need a little bit more strength in the field. But I also do just like personal coaching, kind of similar to what Brandon and Stephen were talking about. And I know, B does this all the time. Good to see you guys. But yeah, I mean, I think I listen to language, and I also pay attention to feelings. And so I'll get with someone and I'll say, let me hear what you're saying, and we can maybe find a snag in the consciousness just by your voice or what you're saying or words you choose. For people who say, I can't do this or things like that, well, there's a belief there. It's like, okay, where did that come from? Where did that originate? What's the truth about this? And then moving through, and then the next thing you know, I mean, miracles, that's our inheritance. We should be living moment to moment to moment in miracles all the time. And I have a whole book called The Science of Miracles. And the under part of that is remembering the frequency of love, because everything that you desire is not out there, like they have both said. It's all in here already. It's about alignment. And when we remember that God, who is love, is in every single one of our cells, and we were born already with God in us, It's not a matter of trying to get an external thing to help us change something. It's about remembering already that it's already in you, getting into alignment. And then as you project that into the field, that's both radiating and magnetic. And so when we have that radiation of love, then you're going to get situations that reflect that. And when you could tell that you're not getting anywhere when you're having these like reoccurring situations that may that will show you, you know, hey, there's an issue here. I keep having this happen, or maybe an illness, or maybe you try to do a business deal 14 times and right at the end, you know, something happens and it falls through. It's like, okay, well, what's the snag? Let's find the snag so that doesn't happen anymore and you can recreate something different. I think a lot of people are creating by default, and not necessarily in a good default. But if we can find that snag and recreate a new path, then everything will be so fluid in a positive way, where you're starting to attract people who are positive and loving and supportive instead of taking. You know, we can test the field too to see if you know, most people that I test are usually 200 and above. With that consciousness of 200 is courage. You know, most people who are 50 or 100, they're not going to come to me because but those people are still playing the blame game. It's everyone else's fault. You know, my parents did this, my spouse, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, 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 no. You are in charge. You are the author. You can do whatever. And it may be genetic, but we can even clear out genetic things. So you have a smoother path that's more inviting and more helpful and more supportive for what you're doing. So yeah, super cool meeting you guys. I would hope to connect with you wherever. But if you go to swiftfire.org or drstornell.com, I'm on all Facebook and what have you, and our website has a lot of different resources and classes. I'm doing an abundance class right now, starts tonight actually, and we're having a group of people who are coming in with 3 things that they're working for and desiring to see. Because we're going to do a project where it's like if all of us are focused on everyone having these 3 things over a 21-day period, what outcome are we going to have? I believe that there's a power in agreement, and there's power in people working together, and of course there's power in just this agreement, whether it's your heart, your mind, and your mouth. This alignment has to happen first. But then whenever you have a group of collective people that are all going towards the same thing, then that's awesome. That's the great pocket of really seeing things. And that's the beauty of having a coach like Steven or any of you guys that do this, is sometimes just having someone from the outside observe and be able to look at something that we don't see. You know, it's very, very important who you're hanging out with, because there's a frequency to that. And and also getting a coach that actually has done it before, not someone who's never done it, but someone who knows how to do it. And, you know, like you wouldn't go to a doctor and if he's never done whatever you're looking for, or you don't get a dentist to fix your roof. You know, you find a really good roof guy, right? So whatever the situation, I just encourage people, if you feel like you have a snag, get some help. Find someone who's gotten themselves out of that snag and get some help, and see maybe there's some blind spots that we can look at and get people to a better outcome.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm getting into, Brandon somehow got off. Getting more into human design, and the deeper I get into it, I see how accurate it is. Like in human design, you have your conscious part and your unconscious part, which is totally white and undefined. And when I look into that, I'm like, oh my God, if like someone's chart, 2/3 of it is like white and is unconscious and is being conditioned from outside, I mean, how much in control are we? I mean, how much do I know who I am? And it's not like it's something new, because human design has been around forever. It's just that when I always, tell people in a coaching session, like, who are you? Like Brandon said, well, I am me. And I'm thinking, who is this me, and how much do we really know who this I or this me is? So human design is kind of giving me more confirmation, and it's the science of differentiation to understand that how we are different. So it's helping me, like when I look at someone's chart and they said, I'm a generator, I know so much about them, oh my god, these are the energy type and they're this or this or that. Or when you see the unconscious part of them, how they have been conditioned for years. So I see that being kind of like a supplement to what I was doing till
That's
now.
awesome.
Yeah, and it's another, I think for coaches, it's a good part to add, because it just helps you to understand other people, some sides that maybe you weren't seeing, but it's also more gives more clarity to people to who they are. Because oftentimes when we get coaching sessions, a lot of people are lost. I mean, they're lost. That's why they get coaching session with us, right? If they were clear, if they knew what they were doing. So in that totality of that, they are lost, they don't know why every areas of their lives are blocked, why am I emotionally so blocked, what do I get into relationships, so many relationships in and out and nothing is working, the money part of it. So I think this is to me, I think, yeah, self-inquiry, it's number one, but this is also something on the side that can help us out. So, Trido, you've been extremely quiet today. It's very unlike you. What's going on? Back to you.
Oh, I love listening. You every time when you guys speak, I'm the student. I'm just gathering information from Stephen and Dr. Charneil and about consciousness, and I just wait for you to call upon me.
Sweet.
um,
Okay. Go ahead, Trido.
I think there were a few things I wanted to add about the conditioning thing. The samsara, the cycle of birth and death. Every day we have up to 70,000 separate each thoughts. And birth of a thought, death of a thought. Birth of an emotion, death of an emotion. The Buddha asserted that all things conditioned is subject to impermanence. They don't last forever. They come and they go. That's beautiful to know, because a lot of people get stuck into certain emotions, certain anger, certain feelings, and they think in that moment it will be a lifetime of this particular feeling. They make a permanent decision based on a temporary feeling, and it is that temporariness that Buddhism asserts that to be aware of that. So in Buddhism, we teach people to use the mind to fix the mind, which is quite difficult, but it can be done. You can win 1,000 battles 1,000 times. Those who have won the battle within oneself is the noblest victor of all. So it takes a lot of effort, right effort, in the Noble Eightfold Path to be that lighthouse, always vigilant. Now, when you hear it, it sounds a little taxing, right? A little exhaustive, anticipated exhaustive work about being ever vigilant, being, restraining your senses, restraining your anger. But it becomes second nature by and through gradual practice. It becomes second nature. You have to train your mind. And it is exactly that we teach, is training of the mind, strengthening that muscle of the mind, in the mind. The muscle of loving kindness, the muscle of seeing things as they are, the muscle of being humility, just like Dr. Charneil says. And it's funny when Dr. Charneil says, nowadays I walk around and I said, I don't know anything. Well, my thing was similar to that, and I tell my students, I said, I know Tom but I don't know jack. and they and they get it. And sometimes I say that first. Sometimes I'm like, I don't know jack, and everyone's like, but I do know Tom, and then they get the joke, and it doesn't sound so. Oh, what's gotten into him? He obviously didn't have his coffee this morning. but
That's funny.
but yeah, the when we learn new things, we also have to see previous decisions that we've made that was unwise and was not scientific based. The
Yeah.
science of effective decision making process. Um, and in my younger days, serving the court system, and in my younger days, in charge of a protection agency, I had to. Oh God, there were so many cognitive thinking. And every separate thought or decision making process had to be jury level decision making process, so that if I had to justify why I made certain executive decisions, that a jury, 12 people, need to agree and it needs to make sense to them. So a lot of people don't really look at the science of decision making process. There's a flood of information out there. You got fake news, you got fake science, you got people, that isn't qualified, isn't experienced, isn't authentic, um, selling stuff, and you have don't just trust, comma, verify. And you have to speak to teachers like Sudi and Stephen and Dr. Charneil, to learn how to do that. How do I trust my gut? Well, we trust everyone else, but we don't trust ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's spirituality. So you have to question things too. In Buddhism, we invite everyone to question everything. Even if I was an actively living Buddha, which I'm not an enlightened being, not an arahant, none of you are
Not with
supposed to
having
believe what
so
I
many different devices, Ben. Try though.
Uh.
Not with having so many different iPhones and laptops and all of that. No. Okay.
Right, because arahants, they just run into the woods with just 3 pair of robes. That's it. Okay.
Yeah.
But like the Buddha have said it himself, don't believe what he says. Don't even believe what he says. And you are to see it for yourself. You are to test out his teachings. So all of us monks are technically, we're like scientists and lawyers. We're supposed to prove the Buddha wrong. We're supposed to examine all of the meditations in details, because he left us, a methodology on how to achieve peace, inner freedom, liberation, how to live a holy life, and all this other great stuff. And we're supposed to examine that, the construction of it, the effectiveness of it, the efficiency of it, and measure, and all this scientific method stuff. And I tell everyone that too. Yeah, that's what I do. I put his teachings underneath the microscope, and my job is to prove him wrong. Everything from the teachings of karma, all the way to rebirth, all the way to the practice of dependent origination, which is what we're talking about here today. And I haven't been able to find one single separate thing in my almost 10 years as a monk. So yeah, so like I said, question everything and take your time with it. Just don't spend too much time, because the other thing the Buddha says is the problem is we think we have time.
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
And so it goes back to trusting the teacher and trusting the process too, is the middle way of that, and to take action, the privilege to know, and a duty to act, and to make your peace priority, the priority of peace, and the priority of knowing yourself. I think Dr. Charneil gives a lot of insight into the biofeedback thing.
yeah.
And Dr. Charneil probably has an abundance of clients and patients is because people don't journal. People don't do all these primitive things that, most of us do. I mean, I journal. I had a conversation with myself when I was like 12 years old. I still have those records. I mean, there's volumes of self-reflection. but yeah, I just wanted to add that previously because I wasn't sure where this conversation was going to go and the types of inputs.
Well,
It's a big
yeah,
subject. It could last
yeah.
hours.
Absolutely. Guys, I gotta end this live. I have another live back to back here. I'm really grateful to have you, all of you guys. And I would love us to do another join live next week, next Wednesday, if you guys are in, so we are more prepared. And I think we're gonna figure out all the distractions we had today with too many platforms. So thank you so much. Love you all. See you all next week, next Wednesday. Love it.
Namaste.
Bye bye,
Take
everybody.
care.
Bye bye. Bye bye,
Bye bye.
guys.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Bye
Thank
bye.
you.
See you next week. Bye bye.